This is Histories and Mysteries. I'm one of your hosts, Ashley, and your other host is
Jessica. And on today's episode, we have a very special guest joining us. He was a student of Heaven's Gate, and his name is Sawyer, and he has very kindly offered to join us today and answer some questions for us.
So everything really for their teachings centers around choice and what choices you want to make.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Teaching some right. And that's why I know for a fact that the choices that every member of that group made to actually lay down their lives, I have a lot of evidence, well, not for everyone, but a lot of evidence for most of them that they were making choices all along that were aware of that kind of end result of we all knew that we were going to be not continuing to live in these human bodies if we stayed with the program. I even when they were saying that you didn't have to die in order to go to the next level because you could actually transform your body, your human body, into a next level body. And that's what Jesus demonstrated, and that's what Enoch and Moses and Elijah and Jesus and demonstrated, according to the record books, by leaving with their body, as was evidenced by Elisha and other students that Elisha talked to at that time. When Elijah left in a whirlwind of fire, that's the way they said it. And the disciples, the 12 disciples, or more than that, because there were female disciples too. And in fact, the female disciples, I suspect, were kind of ahead of some of the male disciples. But they were just in a different lesson program at that time. But anyway, so everything I'm talking about has other links to things that Tiendo said. That I that's why my live streams end up being 4 and 5 hours.
Yeah,
nothing wrong with that. Always good to get good information out there. So, I have an off-topic question. Well, it's obviously on topic, kind of, and if you don't know the answer, that's totally fine. But there are conflicting stories as to how T and Do met. Do you know how they actually met and what the circumstances surrounding that was?
Yes, I do. I know that story very well because Tiendo told it to us in person maybe a couple times, and then Do told it to us in 88 Update, which is on the Heaven's Gate website, and also he told it to the new students in 1994 in an audio tape that's available and it's posted on my live stream. And that was that he was visiting a sick friend in the hospital where T worked as a nurse. Yeah. She was a nurse in the nursery, taking care of preemie babies.
Oh.
Okay, and so she was substituting for another nurse in a different department when she was in the room. I don't know what she was doing exactly at that moment when she came into the room where Do and was with another person, I think, and that sick friend. Maybe there wasn't another person in that room besides Do and the sick friend. I don't know what kind of sickness it was. They didn't say that. But they started off in the T, I guess, brought up the subject of astrology. And Do had been very interested in astrology before meeting T. And he actually had thought about having somebody do his chart, his natal chart. And,
cool.
And T had been doing natal charts and maybe other kinds of forms of charts with people. But not as a business per se, because if it was a business, she wouldn't have required somebody to ask her 3 times for her chart.
Yeah.
And she didn't tell them that she was going to require them to ask 3 times. She wanted to know that somebody was serious about it before she
Right.
would do somebody's chart, spend the time on it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's how they met. And there was no, I don't, in that hospital, I don't think it was a psychiatric hospital. Because why would there be a nursery in a psychiatric hospital?
Yeah.
For babies. Now,
Right.
maybe it was a psych ward
Yeah.
of that hospital, where maybe that guy tried to commit suicide or something. I don't know exactly because they didn't get into that detail. And so maybe, he was thought to be insane. And so, I don't know, maybe that's where that story started. But I know that part of that story started related to some people that gave interviews to the New York Times and other people. I don't know exactly if it was the New York Times that was making it sound like, well, because those vehicles' sister, I forgot her name now, said that he checked himself into a hospital or something, or maybe she said a rehabilitation, or she said he had heart problems. He was having a heart problem.
Yeah, I read that he had like a life-threatening something happen to him, like he had a near-death experience kind of thing.
Right. I remember reading that too.
Yeah.
And now you bring it up, and which may have been the case.
Yeah.
He didn't talk about that, and I didn't hear T talk about it to that kind of detail. But I do know that Doe felt like, well, it's interesting that I don't know if I can't speak to whether that's actually, that all could be totally true, but that didn't mean that even if he checked himself, let's say he checked himself into a Betty Ford clinic to try to overcome alcoholism.
Yeah.
He did say that he was a user of alcohol. He even said his vehicle. And he also said that if he had to live in this world knowing what he knows, and I'm talking about after he awakened and he was with the classroom for many years, he said if he had to live in this world knowing what he knows, he'd have to be drunk.
Oh, wow.
If he had to stay here.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I mean, he didn't use drugs because they were very conservative, and they didn't believe in using drugs for, I'm talking about like marijuana or anything else, like recreational drugs.
Mm-hmm.
But he was circulating with high society. Mm-hmm. Dan Rather was his lunch buddy because he was working as a choral director for the church of it was called St. Thomas University in Houston, Texas, and across the street from that was the office where Dan Rather was working as a journalist. So they would go to lunch together.
Oh, wow.
And Farrah Fawcett was somebody that graduated in his same high school class.
Wow.
So he knew her pretty well. And he told some stories related to that, but I won't go into them unless you want me to.
That's okay. That might get a little off topic.
Yeah. Well, it's all good. I mean, but through Wikipedia, I tried to change that in Wikipedia, but they wouldn't let me many years ago, and because I didn't have any documentation for it, I couldn't prove it except by the '88 update. But they didn't consider that valid documentation because it wasn't actually a published document, even though the book was published that has that in it. But I don't know why I didn't pursue it any further, but maybe it was just my own lack of whatever. But maybe I just didn't put enough effort into it. But then I tried to change it again recently, and it did change it on one of the places where that was listed in Wikipedia. But I don't know if I changed it. I didn't change it everywhere, and I should do that still. See if I can get that changed. But even when I made the changes, they didn't get the changes right.
Really?
They somehow, I don't know if I was out of my mind or something, I changed it, but I tried to do a good job with it. I'm really particular when it comes to that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, but when I went back to it like about 6 months ago, I thought, did I say that? That's not right. But it did tell the story of meeting in the hospital. And that's why on the Heaven's Gate podcast that the Pineapple Street Media did, that became, a big hit on Apple podcasts.
Yeah, I listened to it. It was very cool.
They said in that they gave the update. I asked, I forgot her name now, the producer, Ann Hepperman. I asked her, if she could, because I always put my wish list in when I do document, interviews.
Yeah.
That I give, and I said, can you please, put this in as an update, so that people won't continue to think that story about the psychiatric, that, he was checked into a psychiatric hospital was true.
Yeah.
Because we don't know that as a fact. I haven't seen anybody really document that.
Yeah, and that kind of thing can discredit somebody too, right? So
Yeah, of course they think he's insane.
yeah.
Inside Edition tried to, get me. I don't know if you saw that interview I did with Inside Edition
No.
years
No,
ago,
sorry.
where they came to my house where I live in Vermont, and they on my invitation, of course, and I decided to videotape it, the interview, and so I was able to post on my blog, on my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is 3SPM, like the digit 3, and S as in, actually it means Stone People's Movement, which was a band name that never became a band. Not for
It's a
me.
good band name.
Yeah, right. It was Third Stone People's Movement, like off of Jimi Hendrix, the third stone from the sun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, but so anyway, that's my YouTube channel. But so on the Inside Edition thing, this is actually another story, so maybe I don't want to go into it. Maybe I shouldn't for the time's sake. But now that I perked curiosity, maybe
Yeah.
maybe you're not curious about it. Up to you.
Always curious.
All right. That's what's good about editing. Cut it out.
Exactly.
Just a little more work. But anyway, so what happened was they came and we set up in one of my rooms, and they had the photographer and lighting people and all that, and we got to the subject of let's see, I'll cut to this chase, but Tiendo had been arrested because there were 2 warrants for their arrest put out by one, the husband of a woman who became their first student, who gave them a gasoline credit card to use, but it was the husband's card, and the husband found out about it and said that it was stolen.
Oh.
Okay.
When Tiendo used it a couple times. I don't know how many times they used it. I shouldn't say a couple. I don't know how many times they used it. But for gasoline. Okay, so that was one of the warrants, and that was against T. I don't know why. Maybe T is the one who signed the slips or whatever. But I don't know how that happened. Exactly, that part of it. But then the other warrant for their arrest was because when their car broke down in St. Louis, or right outside St. Louis, they went to St. Louis, and they decided that to use one of those credit cards that he had with him that he wasn't using anymore. And now I don't know why they didn't use them for gas, whatever, but he didn't, at that point he hadn't used them. And so maybe he thought, he didn't want to lead people to them, or whatever the reason was. So they pulled out a credit card and used it to rent a car. And then they had that car, and they kept it longer than they were supposed to keep it.
Yeah.
And they felt they knew that wasn't write, so they would write letters back to the rental car company and tell them that that they were taking care of the car, they were going to keep it for a while longer. And so anyway, they weren't stealing it, whatever they said in the letters. And I don't have any doubt that they did that because they were very responsible people
Yeah.
in the world. And also I witnessed that. And so anyway, the rental car company and the person both reported it as a stolen car. And so what T and Do thought they were doing was they decided to go down to Brownsville, Texas, and with the rental car. Well, they went other places before that, but they ended up in Brownsville in Harlingen, Texas, and they decided that they were going to go to the press and tell them the story of everything they had felt and learned and experienced and recognized to be what their task was, and which included recognizing that they were the two witnesses that were in the Bible, but they didn't like to talk about that. That's another story altogether. But
yeah,
a lot of this is in the 88 update, so I don't need to be too detailed here. So if you want to read that to get some back information. But so anyway, they were arrested and both charges were dropped by both the rental car company and by the husband. But the St. Louis prosecutor decided, according to Doe, that he was up for re-election. I don't know. I guess they re-elect. And so when they were arrested, they didn't give their real names initially.
yeah.
And because I don't even know if they had ID with them anymore. But I guess they had. I don't know what they had. But and they gave them these Hindu names that they had. They were given by this Buddhist monk. It was actually a Sanskrit name. It wasn't a Hindu name. It was a Sanskrit name. And it was Norbu Chin was the Buddhist monk that gave them these names. And so that's the names they gave to the police. Okay. So they were considered to be pretty Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
And so Doe said that the prosecutor, because of the weirdness of the case, wanted to take it up and, get, for a re-election benefit, I guess, whatever. But prosecuting this Looney Tune person. And so T was out and she went and got a nursing job back again so that she could pay for a lawyer for Doe. And he was in jail for 6 months, and he ended up writing Statement 1 that was the beginning of the more public. It was all public at that time. They were going church to church, telling people that leave a card that they were the two witnesses, and then they would run out of the church because they knew what it was. They didn't like anybody that they would meet in their lives that would say that they were the reincarnation of some biblical figure.
Yeah.
Like Cleopatra, they always wondered how come there's so many Cleopatras running around,
Yeah.
So anyway, so condition of Doe was offered a plea bargain 6 months after he was in jail, and that was to bring it to trial or not. And he found out from his lawyer that if he brought it to trial, the charge would be less, like would be 5 months.
Oh, wow.
Would be the penalty for what he did, and in jail. So he decided, well, I'll cop a plea of guilty. So he became a felon, which can be seen as the thief in the night, in a sense of the the scriptures. But both of them could be seen as thieves in the night, right? And so anyway, and on the condition, there were two conditions, or at least two conditions of Doe's release. One was that he take a psychological exam, and the other one was that he doesn't have anything to do with Bonnie Lou Truesdale Nettles. and so T didn't come to pick him up at the jail. And anyway, but and so he took the psychological exam and he passed with flying colors.
Oh, good.
And he said it was kind of ironic that he passed with flying colors when not a day had passed that he didn't at that point that he didn't question his own his sanity.
Yeah.
And so this Inside Edition reporter, when I told that story to him, said he said what?
Yeah.
I said, well, I said it in a shorter sentence, from that whole explanation. And he said, I repeated it with, questioned his own sanity. And then he said, could you say that a little shorter? And I said, he almost even gave me the words, and I fell for it.
Oh.
And I said, he questioned, he questions his own sanity, and that's what they put on there. One of the tiny little bits of information that I gave him in a 3-hour interview. Actually, the interview was over after that. He got what he wanted.
Oh.
Yeah.
And
unfortunate.
I'm not immediately after, but pretty soon after that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was wondering, it was over so easy. So, these people traveled, hours to get to me. And all he wanted was like an hour or, of an interview.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, but but fortunately I was able to put what I said, the whole story in there that included the person that was doing the interviewing on my blog, on my YouTube channel. And a lot of people, saw that and said, wow, look at that. Look, he took you totally out of context.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. And I was talking to my spouse earlier about it too, about how so many things are taken out of context. So, and that's why we want to have you talk as much as possible so we can include it all and so that nothing gets misconstrued or anything like that. So
yeah, I mean, I can understand if you're just gonna put it to where you're taking it out of it was all taken out of context. But Doe didn't consider himself insane the whole time. He was the leader of the classroom. The Heaven's Gate group. We weren't called Heaven's Gate until the very end. I wasn't in the classroom when they came up with that. Mm-hmm. That was one of your questions, I think.
Yeah.
They were called Human Individual Metamorphosis. That was the first kind of name they had.
And you had kind of mentioned that there were different grades that you could evolve through in Heaven's Gate. Do you have you kind of been working on that throughout the years since you dropped out of the program, and you consider that you'd be at that stage now where you could have ascended? Or
well, the idea of grades in school wasn't related to being in the classroom.
Okay.
The way the grades in school came about was Tiendo in 1975 were talking about how the human kingdom was organized to be like 12 grades in school, and that during the first 6 grades in school, and this is the development of spirit, like we were talking about before.
Okay.
In the first 6 grades in school, humans are getting into all things human.
Yeah.
Becoming all they can be, and so that, but then in the last 6 grades in school, the object is to get out of all that.
Okay.
So that those things aren't satisfying anymore. And to try this and try that. But the next level helps the human kingdom with that. And, one big help with that is the fact that we all die. So we can become famous and all that, but it's all going to go away.
Yeah.
And so that helps us question whether this is the meaning of life, whether there's more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's what opens the door to us starting to pull on that there is more. So that's the grades in school part. Now, in terms of growth now, for me or anybody else, that's always the case. We're always able to grow as fast as we want to grow towards next level behaviors and ways, and understanding and information, and seeing their information as the most real information, the most true information. Truth isn't, when you tell a lie from a truth, my understanding is that truth is what's real. It's what really happened. That's all the truth is.
Yeah.
So the more truthful we are, which doesn't necessarily apply in all cases, if like Jesus said, agree with your adversary when you're in the way with them. Otherwise, you might end up before the courts, end up being in jail. So there's times where you're going to seek agreement with somebody, which I'm not saying to lie is right, but like an example would be like some people think that if you lie about anything, that you're disobeying the commandments from God.
Yeah.
But like being a false witness isn't the same thing. Thou shalt not be a false witness against your neighbor. That's a lie, but that's a tremendous lie.
Right.
When you're, but like let's say you're speeding. Some people think that if you're speeding, you're disobeying God because you're not following the government's laws, and you're supposed to follow the government's laws. But the government's laws aren't what we're supposed to follow. We're supposed to follow the next level laws.
Right.
Now, the government has adopted some of those. It doesn't mean that the government's doing bad things by having speed laws. No, they're not. There's a value to a lot of that. Okay, all makes a lot of common sense in a lot of those things, but because even the lower forces, the Luciferian, space alien, fallen angel souls. Now there's a mouthful, right? Even those souls want order in the human kingdom that they're riding herd on, and have been allowed to ride herd on to give us the option to become like them if we want to become like them. And so like an example would be in Tiendo's classroom, we didn't have to follow the speed limit, but we were only allowed to go over it 2 or 3 miles above the speed limit.
Okay.
So that's just an example of showing that, Tiendo. And the reason why only 2 or 3 miles, because in some circumstances, you could go 10 miles over the speed limit. It's not going to be any big deal.
Right.
Like on the freeways, right? 55 is the rule, but everybody's going 70, bumper to bumper. Like I grew up in the city, so I know that about that in New York City, but commuting and everything, but was because they didn't want the law to be stopping us and interfering with us, even charging us money,
Right.
Going over the speed limit, or finding out that there's some investigator that's been looking for this person, because they were hired because they joined with those people that were called the Mysterious Two or the UFO cult, and maybe they're being held against their will, and so Tiendo were very protective of us.
Yeah.
So they wanted us to follow all the laws.
That makes sense.
And we filed tax returns.
Perfect.
Yeah,
I guess some of you had jobs
and we
too,
worked.
right?
We worked jobs in the world.
Yeah.
We didn't stand on street corners asking for donations.
No.
Gotcha.
And we didn't have a central location, where people would be brought to or to be indoctrinated. We didn't have any of that. People weren't added. We only went public on 2 occasions, almost 17 years apart.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
When we were holding public meetings. And those meetings were not true. We just told what we believed, and I gave a lot of those meetings. I was a spokesperson a lot of times in those meetings, and I even talked people out of joining with us in Chicago in 1994.
Why is that?
Well, what happened was we would say at the end of the meeting, if anybody wants to know more information, to stay after the meeting and we'll answer your questions.
Yeah.
And these two individuals stayed after the meeting, and I was a primary spokesman for that meeting. So they came to me and Chakoti. We were the overseers of the group that was putting on those meetings, even though it was a group of 3 groups who were involved in the University of Chicago meeting. But and so they were sitting with me and Chakoti, and I was trying to tell them kind of what we were doing, traveling around the country and doing this and that. And at one point I said, "Oh yeah, we're at this point we don't have any money anymore." So we did ask for donations in that regard. So I'm correcting myself to some degree in that. We didn't go on street corners asking for money, but we would go to anybody that we felt to, like businesses or churches. Was the first way T and Dust set it up so that we would, in '75 when we were going public, we would go to the churches to see if they would help us with our needs, and we would say that we have a need. We're working for the kingdom of God. Sharing new information is what I would say. They didn't tell us to say all these words like this, but what I ended up saying was working for the kingdom of heaven, kingdom of God, whatever I want to say. And I would always put in that we have some new information to share, and we have need of food. We weren't supposed to ask for money. We have a need for food or gasoline or sometimes lodging.
Okay.
If they had a place for us to sleep, or put up our tent or whatever it was. And can you help us? And sometimes people would just give us money. Sometimes they would slam the door in our face. And sometimes they would want to say, what new information, and then we would start to talk.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd give a little bit more. And, and so anyway, so that was the way. But in 1994, we ended up expanding that to not just churches, but anybody. Like we went to not used car dealers, but new car dealers, and told them the same kind of thing, and we got a lot of donations from them.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, they were very generous a lot of times. And we went to a restaurant. We would say that to a restaurant like Olive Garden, and they would give the whole group, like about 6 or 7 or 8 members of the group that we were traveling together with. They would give us a full, full meals, complete meals off the menu. Choose whatever we want.
Awesome.
And we didn't tell them everything. We didn't tell them we were considered by the media a UFO cult.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Unless they asked questions that brought that out of us. I wouldn't hold it back at all.
Yeah.
Because I didn't care about the food that much. I was as much of a zealot as you could be. And I wasn't going to let anything stand in the way of telling the truth to somebody. And sometimes I did lose out on stuff because of that. And I was even too much of a zealot sometimes, to where I got run out of places. But, I was trying to put up a poster on the window of a video store. And I walked in with Chuck Odie in Dallas, Texas. I walked into the video store, announcing the meeting in the poster. But, and there were all these posters of these, barely clad females all over the walls, in this video store. It wasn't pornography or anything, but I made some comments about it as I looked at it. I don't think I said them very loud. But when I got in there, I said to the owner, can we put a poster in your window announcing a meeting? And I showed him the poster, and he said, no, get out of here. He thought we were Christians trying to change, trying to evangelize him. Well, in a sense, we were.
Yeah.
But he was angry. Who knows how many Christians have been through his store,
Yeah.
which I wasn't against him or even his material. But see, that wasn't my better sense about me. That was one of the things that about me that I don't like. That Chuck Odie wasn't like that, but so we were afraid for ourselves when we went into the car, because he came out to the front door and said, "Get out of here, drive away." And he might have been Islamic, and you know how many people were against Islam for many years.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Still are, which to me is poor behavior.
It is
Yeah.
for sure.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, did I finish that?
I think so,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
No, you're fine. I think we just have 2 more questions for you, and then we'll not take up any more of your time. One of the last questions we wanted to ask you, because I think it's really important for our listeners to understand your teaching's point of view, in that, the mass ascension is seen by a lot of people as a mass suicide, but you guys don't see it that way. So can you talk a little bit about the difference between what an ascension is and a suicide is, and how it's different for you?
Yeah, that's. I'm glad you're including that for sure, because it's not really a difficult subject to talk about, but it's not easy to wrap our heads around,
Right.
and I know that because I deal with it almost every day, because I do a lot of communication over the web. So well, see, one way or the other, we're all going to leave our vehicles.
Right.
So, I mean, I say that as an absolute, but whenever I say something as an absolute, I get reminded in my head that there's nothing that's impossible for the next level. So if they want to take somebody with their vehicle so that they don't die, they can do that, which we talked about that before a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But that's going to be quite the exception,
Gotcha.
because the next level doesn't really need human vehicles for anything.
Mm-hmm.
Except on occasion, they can have value to that. But like if they want to keep a vehicle in storage for a future opportunity to use that vehicle, like maybe happened with Moses and Elijah related to the Transfiguration mountain experience that John and James and Peter had.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so with that said, suicide, according to Doe, is choosing to not be with your older member when you recognize your older member,
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
and you recognize the older member's information as being true, when you're given the opportunity to continue to be with your older member. That's suicide, because all those that don't choose to go in that direction, that had the opportunity to go in that direction and were prepared to go in that direction and chose to go in that direction, uh, are playing with fire to not complete that, because they're gonna justify leaving the group, and that justification can turn into even going against their teachers. And then if that happens, uh, they will still get opportunities to recover from that, but it becomes harder and harder to recover the more mistakes we make, in mistakes relative to the qualifications to become a member of the next level, of giving all your love, all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, all your strength to God, to the older member, whatever you think of as, that's the number one commandment according to Jesus and according to Moses,
Mm-hmm.
and who both were Do, the same soul, I believe. And T said that, actually. T told Do that he was the same individual that was Adam, Enoch, Moses, Elijah, and Jesus.
Okay.
And that means that T was the same individual that was Elohim and Jehovah and the Father, the Heavenly Father, and now in a female vehicle, which is Revelation 12 talks all about that.
Yeah.
And anyway, so okay, so now for individuals that don't recognize Doe as their older member, or just getting exposed to the information for the first time, or even or in the classroom and have doubts about it,
Uh-huh.
whether they're expressing them or not. They could still choose to exit when that opportunity is given to them. But they could also feel like they were not ready to do that. And like Rio is an example of that. He left 2 weeks before they laid down their lives, and that had been prepared for in many, many ways that were verbal, that were discussions and all that for years. That was happening. And even I experienced for years talking about that, leaving by our own hand. And I put that in a list of things, right, in the document that I wrote to you about that. And if you want to include, like, I'll make that a blog post, and then you can put a link to that if you want.
Okay. Yeah.
If you want to see all the different ways that we were prepared for making that choice.
Yeah, perfect.
And so okay, so now Tina never used the word ascension while I was in the classroom, but I'm not saying they didn't use it.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't use religious terminology because it was not as accurate as what, because people have different interpretations and connotations, and so that's what's not accurate about it. But the idea is accurate, that a soul is rising out of the human kingdom, like it says in Revelation 11. And like Paul talked about as well, but Paul got a lot of things wrong. But anyway, so so it's not a matter. Well, so whether so talk about people now, right? That's part of that question, I think, right?
Yeah.
How to think about that, because none of us that I'm aware of are giving our all to God. We're not even necessarily capable of that. We don't even know what that is. I didn't know what that was even the whole time I was in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. It was like years later that I started to recognize all the ways that I was not really absorbing everything they were giving. It wasn't even possible for me to absorb everything T and Do gave us. They didn't even have a full picture of everything they were receiving from their older member.
Mm-hmm.
Like they said in the Black Hawk tapes, that they sometimes felt like they were getting, and that they got new information during those Black Hawk tapes, and that it was expressed during those Black Hawk tapes, and and they said that they felt like they maybe got 50% of what the picture was that they were given, because they would get things in as ideas and as not like specific words on necessarily, but and they would both get them at the same time, even though they could be off in different places, and they would come together and talk, and they'd say, "Yeah, did you I started, and they would talk about it and recognize that they were getting the same information at the same time, and they were trying to pull on it, think about, what does this mean? How do we express this to the students, and what is all the ramifications of this? And then they would work on that for sometimes weeks or more. I don't know how long sometimes, and then they would bring it to us when they felt like they had instruction to bring it to us. And so now in the Heaven's Gate book, and in the videotapes of Doe's final exit and the press release that went on to CNN, that Doe talked about how some could leave after by going preferably to some place in the Southwest and screaming to the highest source they can imagine. I'm not using the exact words. I was never good at a lot of the exact words, but I got the intention a lot of times pretty well. Doe told me. Because I have a reason why I'm saying that. That came from Doe's mind, so I'm not just making it up.
Yeah.
But anyway, to see if that's a right step for us, for that person that feels that, and then they will be given, if it is the right step for them, according to the next level of judgment, who are outside their bodies at that point, will give them the courage to take that action.
Okay.
And that's why Rick Odie and Just Odie and Gab Odie and even though Gab Odie didn't go to the Southwest, I don't think, but Oscar Odie and Oscar, his name was, it became Oscar Odie, and who I know, all those individuals, actually. And then there was one person that never was in the classroom that I know about, who was a Grateful Dead roadie for a while. And he said that he left a note that said he was kind of leaving because of the Heaven's Gate group leaving. So they left. And I don't know if there's other people that I just don't know about that might have decided, well, it's time for me to go too. So those all would go with Doe, but going with Doe didn't just include those. When he said that you would go with me, because he said there were 3 categories of people that would ascend, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah.
Now, when you're ascending, this is where you could see it as grades in school in this sense.
Okay.
In respect to the next level, because everybody in the next level isn't of the same growth, but they everybody that gets the next level task of even elementary tasks in the next level is considered to be in the next level, but they might still have to come back to the human kingdom to go through another experience to finish their overcoming, because they hadn't completed it.
Okay.
So then there's other members that were considered to have completed it, that are given next level vehicles that don't even have the capacity to go through a kind of reverse metamorphosis. They don't need any more lessons in the human kingdom.
Okay.
And so among those 38, there were some, Doe said, that would have to come back. But they were still given the option to stay with Doe and leave with him.
Okay.
And so I think they were assigned crews on spacecrafts, and they're monitoring us, all the people that are asking for help in the world. I'm not talking about just with this information. I'm talking about with anything in their lives. It could be, they're having they're dealing with COVID, they're dealing with divorces and, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. If they're seeking the truth, and if they're seeking help from the highest source they can reach among the stars, where the space aliens can't go anymore because they're limited to being on the Earth right now. and near environment. They can be off the planet, but only in the near space around the planet, Doe said. So, but they're human equivalents because they haven't outgrown their humanness. They dropped out of a classroom that they were in a previous civilization.
Okay.
Earth or another planet. So that the first category then are the people that Doe is with, the students that stayed with Doe, who are going to have significant tasks in the next level and elementary tasks in the next level, potentially, if they still need to overcome some things. Okay, then the second group of people that were the dropouts, or people that never even joined, but they recognized Doe as being the older member, and they recognized some of the information, enough of the information that they believed in this, even though belief in the information doesn't mean that you don't have questions about things, that you don't disbelieve certain things. It just means that if you believe in it, then you believe that you will come to understand it at a future date.
Okay.
Okay, so that's kind of where belief is. It's always a moving target kind of thing, because and the speed in which somebody believes in something is relative to their own desire to believe in it, to understand, to have faith in it, to demonstrate it, because it's not just about belief. Belief without works, like it says in the New Testament, in the book of James, is dead. Faith without works is dead. We have to be doing things, and the task now is to stand for T and Doe, that they came from the kingdom that created the earth and all its inhabitants, and continue that stand, and whatever the consequences are of that, taking that stand, and live that stand until they exit their body, however that happens. That's the nutshell overriding instruction. But the procedure is, the formula for leaving the human kingdom is to separate from all our humanness. Now that's going to happen for people in different ways at different times, throughout their lives and in future incarnations of that spirit. Because spirits, they don't really incarnate again, except in a way of, let's say the next level is helping somebody that doesn't have a soul deposit. Well, if they're even curious about T and Doe's information, they might get a soul deposit, or at any point. So that's not, you don't know who and when that happens. We don't know until they die, but even if you do that right before you die, you have that curiosity, it might not be enough.
Okay.
I'm saying might because I'm not the judge of that.
Right.
The next level judges that. They have the computer systems. They can read our thoughts, but they don't do that unless we ask them for help. And then they'll start to try to figure out how to help us in the best way that they can. And so anyway, they're not going to tell anybody, go commit suicide. No, because what Stan Modi said was a student, one of the 38, who wrote an article in the Heaven's Gate book on the Heaven's Gate website that was written with Doe's overseeing, but was left to his words, which was common for us to do. I experienced that when I was in the classroom, that Doe didn't require us to all say things in exactly the same ways, but the general ideas were all coming from his mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had a committee that would go over the documents and do the editing, and not editing, but they would go to the person writing and say, T and Doe actually didn't say this in this way. That's giving them this misinterpretation of that, a little misimpression of that. And then that person would write it differently a little bit. And, and they would, anyway, so there was a growth process in there too. But in that document that Stan Modi wrote, which was called evolutionary rights for victims, and it was victims was in quotes, and rights was in quotes. And in that, he said that, and this was said in other ways as well, 2 or 3 other ways, by mostly students like June Odie, who were among the 38. I think June Odie on maybe 2 occasions, other occasions. But in this one that Stan Modi wrote, he said that to commit suicide because you don't like the way your life is going, or you're mad at somebody, or any of these human reasons, is denying your ability to outgrow that lesson, to gain from that lesson. So it would be worthless to do that. I mean, not worth. I shouldn't say worthless. That's not the right way to put it. But it would be. We need our physical bodies, like I said in the beginning of this, in order to learn lessons, and so that we should all take full advantage of all the time we have to make positives out of any negatives we experience, and look to the next level for how to make those positives, and those ideas will come to us, and then we'll see them reflected in the things. And then what you do is you take steps in that direction. You don't get the whole package. You get something that you see in the news, or something a friend says, or your spouse says. All of a sudden occurs to you that maybe they had something there. Maybe I can make that change in my life, or I can to grow a little bit from that experience, and then there'll be more steps, and and then humans are repeatedly are given those, but asking one time for help doesn't cut it with the next level. I mean, they'll help you every time you ask, but and they might even help you even in between your asking. They will, but they want us to rely on them. They want us to depend on them, because they're the only people that are dependable, 100%.
Yeah.
Not that humans can't be trusted a lot of ways, but humans aren't capable of being next level members.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So suicide is not the right step to take. And Carl Odie, who was in the classroom for several months, but got a lot from it. And he joined while I was in the classroom. I met him in the classroom, and he's been on my back. I'm saying it that way because of kind of a human way of saying it, talking about all the things, because there are a lot of things that were said about this, and he's like nailed me to the ground.
I think you mentioned him in your blog, right?
What's that?
You mentioned him in your blog, correct?
Oh yeah. I just wrote a new blog entry, and he just he just put a comment on that blog entry that I said no to suicide in the top of my blog post. And I said a lot of other things in that title, and he put a comment on that, and he quoted something from Doe's Final Exit, and I realized, wow, I didn't see that because I don't have that transcribed. So when I did my search on suicide, I didn't see that what Doe said about it, and to where it opened the door that somebody that didn't even have a relationship in the classroom would go with Doe if they recognized him and they believed in his information, and left after him. And so I told him thank you for that, and then he's got his own lessons to learn, because he dropped out because he didn't he was questioning. He didn't. I'm not sure how he would say it now, but he told me, I believe, that he questioned Doe about certain things that didn't receive Doe 100% or something like that. I don't know. but I don't want to put words in his mouth.
Right.
Of course.
But he's a dropout for a reason. None of us were sent or dropped out in order to continue with this spreading of the information.
Yeah.
We all had the capacity to graduate.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people have told me that, Sawyer, I think you are here for, you were supposed to be here. Well, there might be a little bit of truth to that. Like the next level, like Tiendo said originally, that there might be some in the classroom that weren't returned souls coming back to take human vehicles for the third trimester of the growth process, the graduation process. And so might be just humans that are very advanced because they're believing everything and you're going with the program. But so I don't know how many of those there might have been. I don't know if I was one of them. I kind of think I wasn't, actually. I'm not going to use that as an excuse for my own falling down on graduation. But see, the next level doesn't mope about their failures.
Mm.
And so Joe told me that failure is sometimes the biggest lesson to overcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So anyway, I hope I covered that enough.
Yeah, that was
No,
excellent.
that was
Thank
perfect.
you.
So we probably just have time for one more question. And that's basically, what are you up to now?
Well, I can't say 100% of my time is spent trying to stand for T&O, but my 100% of my mind is in that direction. But I do everything like everybody else does. I'm retired, so I don't have to make any money.
Right.
And I got some inheritance that ended up paying a lot of the bills I accumulated. I had $50,000 in credit card debt that I worked up after my partner broke up with me and I didn't have an income anymore because she was the primary income winner.
Yeah.
And so I ended up paying that back. And then I still have some of that to live off of because my Social Security doesn't cut it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I do side jobs. I play music on the street, when I can. And of course, I have gigs and stuff, but not anymore. Not anymore.
Yeah.
I sell some books once in a while, but it's going to dwindle down to nothing. But that's okay. I'll figure out other ways if I'm still alive. I'm trying to keep my health up so I can be of service for as long as I can. I don't feel like I don't have any desire. I don't have. It's not like I don't have any desire. Actually, when I got sick with Lyme's disease and I couldn't walk and I was in pain, I couldn't sleep that well. I could walk a little with a crutch because it would happen to one leg at a time. Foot, leg, and ankle with the swelling and the pain from it. I wasn't taking any painkillers. I guess I could have done that. Maybe I would have been okay. But cayenne pepper is really, really good as a therapeutic ingredient, superfood. But you got to be very careful about the use of cayenne pepper because it's very powerful. But it can clean out your body and help you with a lot of ailments.
Okay.
As well, the whole transfiguration diet is beautiful, kind of fast. Even if people adopt just parts of it, it's a great thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I maintain that, and I talk to people over I spend at least 8 hours or 12 hours every day. I cut wood to burn for heat. Perfect. I can do that again. I couldn't do it for years because of the Lyme disease. Yeah. And that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm working on different documentary groups. 2020, the ABC people they've interviewed me, and they came up to Albany. I met them in Albany and interviewed with them, but they've been kind of silent recently since the election.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if they're going to drop it or what. But and then there's another group that's putting something out on HBO Max, who I did a lot of stuff with them. They came up here. They had a big operation.
Yeah.
And they're supposed to put a lot of a 4-part series out.
Wow.
They might have done the first one already. I don't even know anymore because I sometimes don't even watch these documentaries that I've been part of
Yeah.
unless they give me a link to it. You know,
Of
uh,
course.
I don't know why I don't. I should. I should because I critique them and then I put it on my blog. You know,
Yeah.
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 what I feel was accurate, what wasn't, in
Mm-hmm.
my opinion, and put the doc. I don't want my opinion to stand. I want to be documentation to things.
Right.
Yeah.
And I do the blog. You know, I mean the YouTube channel, which I've talked about a lot about the signs in the heavens, like Jesus said there would be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars. The stars could be maybe thought of as planets and comets and asteroids. You know, pointing out how the Space Force was, you know, that's where all the money's going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Money for the what was it, the way the that first big $3 trillion that went because of COVID. A lot of that didn't go to COVID. It went to the corporations,
Mm-hmm.
and they could eliminate a lot of their people, so they could reduce their labor force,
Oh.
so that they could have more money to do what? Build underground cities. They've been doing that for a lot of years, building underground places to run to if they need to, and it talks about that in Revelation 6. That's yet to come, to where they're going to flee to those areas. And I think they use that. I think they use COVID as an exercise for all the people that are aware of and have bought. They may charge $1 million for a module in an underground city, you know, an apartment, you know, in an underground complex. You know, Elon Musk with the boring, he's, you know, building those tunnels. I witnessed some of those tunnels being built in Pittsburgh,
Oh wow.
which I don't
Oh.
uh, I don't know if it was I don't know if that was the tunnel, but went to the new airport that was being built.
Oh, okay.
The Denver airport has long been thought to be have an underground facility under it.
Cool.
And you know, and they even put like all different kinds of mythological symbology through the art through that airport. I was in that airport. I saw a lot of that, and you know, there's people that talk about that. But anyway, so they want to be able to shoot down asteroids. They want to have laser beams that can do that. They're talking about using nukes for that, for the asteroids to deflect them, and they want bases on the Mars and the Moon for that reason and for other reasons, because they want to find elements that can give them anti-gravity, because they know that anti-gravity exists as an element because of the backwards engineering that was done on some of the spacecrafts that crashed or were given to them by the space aliens. The space aliens are souls, and they're hybridizing human vehicles. So that they have vehicles that they can control, just the same way that humans raise children to be in their business. It's the same kind of thing, but they're using human DNA mixed with the DNA that they had before. They've been using all along for even thousands of years, many thousands of years even. And they can store them in freezers, and they can store the eggs and the sperm, and just like humans are doing now. That's why humans are doing it, because it's because they're preparing to go underground, even though they don't all know that, and they don't all know when that's going to happen and how that's going to happen, to what degree it's going to happen, and for what the cause of it's going to be. Those thoughts are provided by the Luciferian space alien fallen angel souls. They're beamed down on humans all the time. And anybody that thinks that's not possible doesn't understand how similar that is to the way that radio signals are beamed down on all of us all the time. Those are thoughts. You know, we're receiving those thoughts over the airwaves.
Okay.
That's why the very large array in where the Roswell crash happened in the plains of San Agustin in New Mexico, they have those big telescopes that are trying to perceive radio signals, and they've been getting some really strange things over the years over there.
Interesting.
Those weren't built in that location by accident.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of people that know very well that there are space aliens among us. Now, they could be actually literally among us, walking around in what vehicles that are human vehicles, but that are a mix of space alien. See, you can't really say it as space alien anymore when you talk about it that way, because the original bodies that the space aliens had, whenever they went through when they were working for the next level to some elementary capacity as like a student membership, like I was talking about before, those vehicles are all dead. Okay, now, so those genes that they passed on, if they were able to put some of those genes into human vehicles, as it talks about in Genesis chapter 6, they get diluted and stuff. So even though I'm saying that there could be aliens among us, we all have that in us.
Mm-hmm.
There's no human vehicles that don't have that in us.
Yeah.
Because that's the way it was designed to work, so that we could overcome it.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
of course.
So anyway, so I could go on forever about all this, but that's what I'm doing now. I'm trying to, and I'm trying to sort through it. Holy smokes, this has been difficult.
Yeah.
I know exactly, by having the human experiences that I've had with a child and a partner and a mortgage, and T used to say that we're not in the real world in the classroom.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
She said in the real world, this is what happens and this is what happens. And I didn't know what she was talking about when she said. I thought we were in the real world.
Yeah.
Next level was the more real world in the classroom. But that's not what she meant. She meant the real world where you had to pay bills. You had to, in the commune, it was very easy in a lot of ways, because there was always somebody, if they lost their job, somebody else could take up the slack.
Right. You don't have that in public.
Yeah. So, but so I didn't have that experience before I joined, because I didn't have children. I didn't have bills. I was living like a kind of a hippie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got so much experience and so when, I knew that there was going to be a lot of problems in the approach to the end of the age, the end of the recycling, butting up against the total recycling, which I don't know how far away that is, but I don't think it's that far away. But, I can't make predictions, and that recycling doesn't mean that everybody's going away, and the next level can take the souls and the spirits, the people that die from an earthquake or from a volcano or an asteroid strike or from human wars or whatever it is. That's why victims was in quotes, because the people that die because of pestilence, they get what they believe at the time that they die.
Okay.
And what we do is what we believe.
Yeah.
And not only what we think. What we think is less what we believe than what we do. I mean, I can't really say less or more, really, in that respect. But but yeah, that's the bottom line. So it's how we live in relationship to the next level, and the best behavior we can have right now is to be humanitarian. Yeah. That's the that when the older member's not physically with us anymore, that's the best behavior we can have. When the older member's with us, the best behavior we can have is behavior that would be pleasing to the older members, that and even be in their company and learning their lessons in order to graduate.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've got a mix right now of, but that's, Jesus taught that too. He said, love your neighbor as yourself, doing to others as you'd have them do to you.
Right.
And and so so there are many people that are being born now, more and more. Birth isn't just a single event. It's not. It's a process. It's always a process.
Mm-hmm.
So my understanding from Tiendo. And so yeah, I know people that ask me what to do. They're friends with my Sawyer Heaven's Gate page, and I never go after friends. I don't suggest. I don't even go to suggestions for friends to friend them. I did it one time and I didn't like it. I didn't feel right about it. So so I don't do that. So all the friends on my Facebook Sawyer Heaven's Gate page are people that want to be friends with me. I mostly accept everybody, but some people I don't, and I send them a message first. And like people that are showing pictures of their nakedness.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be involved in that. So
Right.
so I asked them, but now I send them the same document I send everybody else, which is kind of explains a lot about the overview that I feel like I have and I'm trying to stand for. But this one person came to me and said, what do we do? I mean, she's wanted to work with me doing a podcast or something for a number of years, and she has a farm. I said to her, build your farm, put your efforts into getting associated with farms, so that you're not dependent on the government. Because socialist programs are great.
Uh-huh.
But if the socialist programs are tied into going along with what the government tells us to do,
right,
in every shape and form, like even inform on people, tell people that, you're not doing that, so you don't, and so then all of a sudden you get a phone call and it says, or whatever, you get a message that says, since you're spreading this misinformation about us, you're not going along with the program, you're not obeying our orders, therefore you're not going to get that food help anymore.
Right.
So and it talked about this in the Bible, is happening, and I hope it doesn't get to that. But people in Canada, Justin Trudeau, he's coming out and talking about it in the World Economic Forum, and the United States people, the Gates Foundation and the World Health Organization and the UN and the G7. I think the beast, as it says in the Bible, is the G7 and the G10. The 7 heads and the 10 horns. The horns that represent the military. Because the money, the G10 are the military ministers. Not military ministers. The G10 is the financial ministers of the head 10 organizations, that are also part of the G7, but includes a few more. And so loyalty to them or loyalty to the next level. That's the choices we have.
Yeah.
And what that loyalty means, I'm not saying that somebody that works for the government, and they're pushing paper or, even in some project are doing something wrong. They're being showing no, it's where their minds are at. Like it says, you're going to receive a mark of the beast in your head or in your hands. In other words, you're actually working for them in a way, promoting their agenda. Their full agenda, not just the agenda that's in the mainstream media, because that's very little of their agenda. I mean, well, it's not little actually, but I mean, it's hidden. There's a lot of hidden aspects of it. But like the global warming, the humans aren't controlling the weather of the planet. They can do some things to stimulate some weather events, little tiny weather events, but they're not making hurricanes happen. I feel like but Tiendo said that the next level had a lab that takes care of the weather on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
There's a ton of evidence of that. But there's people that believe that the humans are creating the earthquakes, even though fracking might be doing some of the earthquakes, and they could put a nuke into a volcano and maybe stimulate that volcano to come about. But the next level can do that. They can do that. They don't need humans to do that. But humans are used by the next level with their own choices to stimulate the spading of the garden. Spading meaning turning over the earth again, so that to get a new planting. And that includes people becoming victims. But nothing is lost by those people that become victims unless they never became anything.
Gotcha.
If they never became anything, eventually they'll be recycled, just the same way that animals are recycled.
Okay.
Now, so what that means doesn't, I mean, the flesh is going to go away. Yes, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And, but the minds can then, like Tiendo talked about originally, when the planet was designed, they provided all the pathways in the human kingdom that humans could choose. Now, I'm not saying that all the, every little color of everything, shade. And I mean, it's all in there. Yes, it's all in there, of course. Yes. But, so I guess it is all the pathways. But, let's say you got the Star Wars movie where they talked about the bar scene where you had all these different kinds of vehicles that had, 10 eyes coming out and tentacles, as a human equivalent. I'm not saying that's not possible somewhere in the universe, but maybe even the idea of having that maybe is even provided. Now, one of the ways I wondered about, which Tiendo didn't talk about, but I wondered about if that's provided, is by all the spirits that are a module. They're like an object. They're a frequency object.
Mm-hmm.
And when those objects get close to a human, they are communicating everything they become. Even their illnesses are communicated potentially to the humans in bodies.
Mm-hmm.
But only if the humans accept their communication. So let's say it's a human that died because somebody murdered them. I'm just giving you an extreme example.
Right.
I mean, there's 100 million, billions of examples, right? But and they want to get back at somebody. They just had this hatred for whatever it was that they think. They died thinking, let's say it was in the war, and it was the Americans against the Iraqis. Okay, so those spirits then hook on to those people that they died because of, and they can plague those people as like haunting them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dreams and things, and so those people can try to overcome it, which is difficult, which they can, or they can end up, being mad at people and just wanting to take out their anger and walk into a church or something and blow people away, or what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of examples of that.
Yeah.
That have been happening to us in our civilization, especially since the 90s, since Tiendo left, which they said was going to happen.
Yeah.
After they left, because they said it was being held back from happening before that because they wanted the classroom to be able to proceed, and but these things needed to happen so that other people would be put to the test, in a sense. And we're all being put to the test of where we're going to put our loyalty. So there's nothing that can't be overcome, So I'm all for the Green New Deal when it comes to cleaning the water, putting filters on the oil. They've known how to filter the air with reverse osmosis on the water and with different air filtration systems on the smokestacks to where we wouldn't have to be putting carbon particles into the atmosphere as much as we are.
Yeah.
Cities are polluted and people are getting asthma and all that. And all the toxins put in the food supply is like, that could all be cleaned up, but that's like one of the last things that are talked about in the Green New Deal. That's before Congress.
Right. Yeah, and this might be getting a little deeper for our podcast, but
yeah, I know.
But we really, really appreciate your time and coming to talk to us this evening. This was extremely informative and really interesting. So we really, really wanted to thank you for coming on and taking your time. I mean, we spent almost 2 hours and 40 minutes of your time, and I just can't believe, thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yes, thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure.
We really appreciate it, and we really enjoy talking to you. So
thank you all.
And we just want to give a special, again, thank you to Sawyer for joining us on this podcast. We really, really appreciate it. He did not have to do that. And, like we said, we took up a lot of his time, and so we really appreciate it. But if you want more of us lovely ladies, you can find us on TikTok at Histories and Mysteries Pod. You can email us at historiesandmysteries515@gmail.com. And we are on Facebook and Instagram at Histories and Mysteries, all spelled out. We hope you have a wonderful week, and we look forward to bringing you 2 new stories next week. Bye!